Hey guys, how's it going? Happy Monday. I know, it's so weird because usually I see you on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but this week it's earlier. So I apologize. My calendar said noon. Your calendar said noon, mine said 1:30. So sorry for the delay, but we're here and guess what? We are going to sew together the Linda Tunic on stage 2. So let me make sure this is off. Can you hear me? Hey, I see the wolf pack rolling in. Hey guys, we are live on Brother Sew's Facebook and YouTube page, Sewing and Crafting. I'm Angela Wolf. I am a brand ambassador for Brother. And of course, I'm a little biased, but I love using their product. That's why I'm here. So the Linda Tunic, last week, I'll give you a little sneak peek over here. That's where we stopped. And that's where we're going to pick it up because I received so many notes that said, please don't cut the collar until I watch. So, all right, we'll do it together. So everyone, yes, I'm wearing my top that's been on the dress form, but today is where you don't want a wardrobe malfunction because I've simply basted it together. I wanted to check the fit and decide if I was going to add sleeves or no sleeves. I kind of like it. I'm making 2 because I love this fabric. So I think this one I'm going to leave as a tank top. But I just basted the sides together. I thought I'd have time to sew in the sleeves before I saw you, but that didn't happen. So let's just say we won't be doing any cartwheels because that could be a very bad wardrobe malfunction. So how are you guys? Did you have a great weekend, by the way? Yeah, we do live shows on the Scan and Cut. So watch the schedule, Olga. I don't know what the schedule is the next couple of weeks, but yes, we definitely do. All right. Hey, Darlene. Phyllis, I just finished shipping all of your girls' fabric. Petting it on the way out the door. Thanks. Hey, Jennifer. Okay, so you ready to go? So this is how it'll work. I can't quite see all of your questions while I'm sewing the top together, so feel free to ask away, and I will take breaks in between and see what's going on. Sound good? Okay, let's go over to the table, and I'll remind you where we were last week. Joanne, the pattern's on my website if you go to angelawolf.com. All right, so here you go. This is where we stopped last week. And we had already pressed this under. Remember, I basted this in. If you missed that episode, you can go back on Brother Sews and watch it. So we cut away this part, and now we have the 2 pieces that are going to be the placket. But what I wanted to do is to line these up and decide how I wanted to cut them. Remember, I just cut rectangles here. I only need this much fabric on each one. So let's go ahead and place these in. I'm going to kind of line this up of how it would look in the shirt and determine how I'm going to cut this. Actually, I'll use this line right here as a guide. All right, so you can see this is what it's going to end up looking like. I think I kind of like having this, whatever, motif going all the way across the same at the top, don't you? I think it blends in well. So if this is going to be my bottom area where I'm going to sew this in, I'm just going to mark this right here. And let's see what our pattern looks like on here. Now remember, this is a piece of fabric folded. I've already attached the interfacing. I just cut out a rectangle because it's much easier. And I know I'll be adding a little seam allowance onto this one. So let's see, why don't we go right here. And I cannot remember if I grabbed my paper rotary cutter or my fabric, but I guess we'll find out real quickly, won't we? And it looks like I didn't quite cut the pattern right on the, there we go. Well, now it's paper and fabric. Such a no-no, I know, but that's okay. And then this one is going to be exactly the same. I just prefer cutting on the right-hand side. So I'm going to go right to the bottom there. Yeah, so for those of you that are just following, there's about what? I don't know. What is it, girls? Like 5 or 6 episodes of this already. The Linda Tunic, it's a super easy pattern to sew. And I'm making mine a little fancier. This is a silk chiffon and velvet. So this will be the lineup for where the collar goes. And now look, when that fits in there, you're not even going to notice that there's a placket hardly. All right, so the next steps are, we're going to take this. I'll just fold this back. It's easier for me to see this way. And you can see my pink stitch line here. I basted that, remember, with an opposite color thread so I could see it. So I'm going to actually line up my placket there and stitch from the bottom to the top. Grab just a couple of little pins here and let's go ahead and pin this into place. I don't usually use pins, but because I have to hold everything there while you guys watch. Wait, you know what I better check, by the way? Oh, that's a sharp pin. Okay. I was just thinking, uh-oh, what if I have the wrong side of the fabric? Remember? Because it has a nap. If I had sewed it, oh, goodness, I got myself good. If I'd sewed it this way, well, that would still be okay. We're good. All right, so now this fabric has a little touch of love. That's what I always call it if I snag myself that bad with a pin. These are silk pins, so they're super, super, super sharp. Nope, we're good. Well, at least it's my outfit and not yours, right? Could be worse. I could be sewing your outfit. Have you guys ever done that? I sewed one time. It was actually for myself, but it was a white silk, 4-ply silk, which that fabric is so expensive. And I got a little dab of blood on it. So you guys gave me a ton of tips of how to get it out of the fabric, and it worked. Okay, so this is the wrong side of the fabric. You can see I've pinned this placket in place. And now I'm going to pin this one in place as well. So it's pinned to the wrong side. So once I sew it, it will flip out. You'll just have to follow me on this. All right, and now this one will go here. Again, I'm going to flip it while I sew because I'm going to stitch right along that pink line that I gave myself. Hey, Sue, don't worry. There's a ton of these episodes on It's So Easy, which I'm going to do a marathon on Wednesday. And so you're following me along now with this beautiful fabric because I'm going to wear it. And then you can watch those other episodes on Wednesday. That'll be on Angela Wolf. I think, no, it'll be shared here on Brother too. So you can see the pink thread, can't you? Maybe. Well, you'll just have to trust me then. Okay. So let me just make sure that this lays okay. Once this is sewn, this will flip closed and this will flip closed. And remember, it doesn't close like this. It actually stays open. All right, so let's go to the sewing machine. Now, I also brought my Move It foot along. At first, I'm not going to use that just to stitch this, but I want to show you some things for this while we're stitching this velvet. So once we attach that, we'll give it a good pressing, and then we're going to attach our back. It's kind of our shoulder yoke. All right? So before I go over there, I'll just double check that you don't have any questions. Yes. So Wednesday, I'm doing a marathon of the It's So Easy episodes that sewed the Linda Tunic together. So you'll be able to capture that. If you haven't seen it before, it's on my YouTube channel anyways. But Michelle, we're using the Linda Tunic. Fabric glue would be helpful. Yeah, you mean for my prick in my finger? Oh no, Tammy said she bought fabric for the Linda and bought too much. That's okay, maybe you can make 2 tops. Veronica, do you have more of the one I'm wearing, or the one of this one? I have to check. I think I'm out of this, but I can order more. Maybe I'm checking right now. This one, I have a little bit left. A little bit when I'm finished. Marcia, the usual. It'll start at 1:30, but just keep an eye out. I'll send you guys an email. Okay, let's go to the sewing machine. Okay. So I am using the Brother Luminaire. Today I'm using the XP1 with the upgrade, which is very similar to the XP2. Take you in here closer. All right, now can you see that pink thread on here? You can see it a little bit better there, can't you? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow that pink thread as a stitch line. And I'm using black thread right now, but you'll be able to see the pink as a guide. I'm going to start at the bottom on this side. And I'm just using the regular foot just for this section. It's just easier for me. I'm going to put your needle down right in the corner of that snip. Okay? I have my machine set up with a 2.5 stitch length, straight stitch. Put this down, and let's go ahead and use the Sew Straight laser light. See that come on here, and see what color would be best. I'm guessing maybe nope, that's a little hard to see. How about the whole grid? Now you can see it. See the whole grid? So on this grid part, if I were to set this up, I think I have my lines on green right here. I know some of you said, why would you guys use this? Because I'll tell you what, you can line up. There's so many different options here. So this is a grid that goes all the way across, and I'm going to just move the grid over. Yep, you can do that. So I moved the whole grid over. So this line here matches up with this grid line right here. I can also notice that my seam allowance is lined up with the edge here. All right, so I want to do a stay stitch, which is just stitching in place. Oh, nope, I have the wrong stitch on. Never mind. That was back stitch. It'll work though. And I'm just stitching as close as I can. Now, by the way, I'm leaning over this camera, so if this is like a little bit off, just know, don't give me a hard time. Well, you can give me a hard time. It's okay. All right, get to the end of that, and now I will do a back stitch. You could do back stitch or stay stitch, whichever one you want. All right, so there's my stitch line. And when I fold that open, you can kind of see this fabric. There's the grid on there. This is going to be beautiful. All right, let's do the other side. Now this side, I'm flipping it around and stitching from the top to the bottom because I want to still follow my basting line that I had there. Now there's a stay stitch. So the difference is a stay stitch is just one time up and down in place. I just have to lean over just a little bit further so I can see. You know what, I'm just going to pull that out just for a second. There we go. I'm trying to stay out of your way of the camera. There you go. Turn that off just for this roundup. And I'm going to stitch all the way down to the corner, but not through. Get my hand out of there. If I take this out, put the this around, you can see I have one side stitched on and the other side stitched on. And the last step is going to be to sew this bottom section here. But I'll take you over to the iron first, okay? So hold on there. I just got to switch you over. There you go. All right, so here is my fabric. You can see it pretty good on this. Here, I'll put this yellow under here, and then you'll really be able to see it. So we stitched along this line here, and we stitched along this line here. And I was stitching over my camera, so I got to double check that I did this straight. I don't have to go back and do it again off camera, but that looks pretty good. Our last step will be to sew this bottom section in. So let's just go ahead and give this a good pressing. What I'm going to do is press this collar or the placket. First, I'm just going to press it closed, and then I'm going to press it open. You'll see. And now let's press this open. Now remember, if you didn't watch last week, I'm using an iron shoe on here, which means that I can press right on top of this velvet. If you don't have an iron shoe, don't be pressing this fabric or you're going to be really not happy. You'll end up with a bunch of little burn holes or burnt out velvet. I guess that's, I guess this is a burnout velvet, no pun intended, right? All right, let's see what we have. See, I don't have a ton of room for my placket, but I think I have just enough. So now this is how it's going to stay open. So this is the wrong side. And our last step is going to be to fold up this bottom section down here. And if I flip it over, I'll just hold this in place for a second. You would stitch from here to here. Okay? I just got to grab it. And I did that one little back stitch down there. I sewed down just a little bit too far. So here's the trick on this. Do you see right here where we had our corner and we did our snip? Remember that? I'll put my fingernail under there so you can see it. The reason we did that on the fabric is because you need to stitch right to that corner. Well, when I was leaning over the camera, I stitched a little bit past this corner. I'll make it work, but you really want it to go right to the corner, and that's what helps. See how I went down here? It should have stopped up here. So I will have to fix that because when we go to sew this, here's the wrong side of the fabric. This is going to flip up and you're going to stitch right along that pink line. If this is over too far, what happens is you end up having a crooked bottom section. So I'm just going to grab that. Hold on 1 second. So I'm going to rip out those two little stinking stitches and make sure I go right to the corner. This is the same thing if you were doing like a bound buttonhole or like a pocket that has like a welt pocket. Those basting stitches were your guide. If you go past that, you're going to end up with a hot mess. So I've back stitched this right, if you look closely, right to the pink corner. Okay, much better. All right, now we'll go back and now we'll stitch it. First, I'll take you to the iron one more time just to see this. So now when I go to take this and press this open, now this corner will go to the right part. And when I go to stitch this, this is the part that's a little tricky. This collar is not going to close. It's going to angle open just a little bit. So I'm just going to give it a little pressing. And this is really how I do. I make sure that this lines up nicely at the bottom. What you don't want is you don't want this to be gapping. You don't want this to be off-centered. Even if I cut it a little bit wrong, you just want these to meet, that when they open up, your collar will be the same. Does that make sense? And if you're sewing the actual pattern, the directions are in there. I'm just giving you step-by-step guidance as if I were making it, which I am. All right. I'm just going to hold these in place because I don't want those to move. You could put a little hand tack right there if you wanted to as well. And then I flip it over from the wrong side. I'll get my hand out of there in just a second. So this is the bottom of the placket that I'm pinning right now. I'll bring you a little bit closer. So this is the bottom. We're going to stitch from this corner to this corner. I'm just capturing the edge of my placket. That's going to look good. All right, back to the sewing machine. Oh, the noise, Richard. Richard, the noise that you're hearing is the ironing board. It's one of those that blows up from the bottom. It's a fan that blows up on the ironing board. So it'll blow my fabric up. And while I'm pressing, I mean, for interfacing, it is the bomb. It's great. So that's the noise that you're hearing. But she thought I was playing like rock music in the background or something. All right, so I'm going to try to sew this and get out of your way. Bring you just a little bit closer. And then I'll lean over without popping out my side seams. Now see, when I push this back out of the way, can you see that pink? Yes, you can. You can see that pink because I can see it too. I'll bring you even closer. Wowzer. So you want to put your needle down right in that corner. That's where you had snipped. I'm going to do a little back. I could have done a stay stitch. I'm just doing a little bit of back stitching right there. Now, here is a little trick for you. Instead of stitching straight, stitch a little bit that way. So just follow my finger. I'm making a big curve here, but that way. I'm only really curving like 1/8 of an inch. But if you sew in, or I should say out, just a little bit, and then back in, it's an optical illusion. When you're done sewing, your seam will actually be straight. All right, so I sewed in and then out. And I'll take you over to the ironing board, show you what I have. I'm probably going to go back and straighten this stitch out just a little bit. It's just a little bit tricky to sew this velvet. Oh, hey, meet you at the ironing board. It's a little tricky stitching this velvet over the head of the camera, but so what you did is you stitched, instead of going straight, you went in a little bit and then out here. And what that does is when you flip this over, it actually makes it look like you stitched it straight, even though it's just a little trick. So you're basically sewing up and around, just a little bit. Give it a good pressing. Press it from the wrong side real quick. Now what I'll do, and I'm not doing this on camera, I will go back. First off, when I'm not live, I'm going to go back and just double check my stitches are straight, and then I'm going to serge this edge, which will cut off the excess of my tab, and serge this edge. So that's 4 edges that are going to be serged there. If you don't have a serger, you could use a zigzag stitch. There's also an overlock stitch on your sewing machine, at least most sewing machines. All right, let's go. Back over here. Okay, so this is what I have so far. So you have to picture just so you can get a visual of where we are on here. Now, what's all this extra fabric for? Well, remember that there's gathering in here. Now, you didn't have to keep the gathering, but I did because I thought it would look nice. I wanted the top to be really flowy. I'm going to wear it probably with the leggings that I have on here today. So this section goes to here. This does not go all the way up to the shoulder because now we have a piece that attaches from here and all the way back to here. Joanne, it's called an iron shoe. Iron shoe. S-H-O-E. Iron shoe. That's what was on there. All right. So see, it's looking good, even if my stitches were a little crooked because we're live. And then this side here will also be gathered a little bit. Isn't it looking fabulous? Okay. So a couple of things I want to point out before I take this off the dress form. One, I cut out the back piece, and I didn't do it with you live because I was just doing it and forgot that you might have wanted to see it, but this is what happened. I laid out my fabric on my side, and you can see there's definitely, like this is all see-through, and then there's sections of velvet. So I laid out my front onto the fabric, and then I laid out my back piece. Wrong side, like this. So I matched up my underarm seam with the underarm seam on the pattern, and check this out. Well, this is where it's like, I sure hope I did it right since I'm talking about it. Oh my gosh, it looks fantastic. You're not even going to be able to see that side seam, are you? I think this is going to be fantastic. Okay, so this is the back. Now the back doesn't go up to the shoulder either, because remember we have that like back yoke piece. So I'm just going to pin this to the dress form. Keep walking around with my pins. Just to get an idea. And then I'm also going to give you one more fitting tip. I know a ton of you were in the Fashion Sewing Club when we did all that fitting there. And we did some major fitting, like full bust, small bust, high bust, low bust. So this section here, this also is going to be a gather, or you could do something like a pleat for it to hang. So this is going to be a really flowy top. Okay, so this is what we have so far. And this is the last piece, which I haven't decided yet. I mean, hopefully I don't change my mind. This is why I do it live, and then I might change my mind. I don't know. So this is the yoke piece. And I cut it going this way, but I wasn't sure if I should recut a piece with this going like sideways. So you guys can vote. That would be if it's like kind of combined up with the fabric. I mean, it looks good going that way. I just don't know. And then in the back, I guess it looks fine. What do you think? I'll bring you a little closer. So this is the back when it attaches. So it'll actually, that was like a really awesome mistake. I just cut this piece out. I didn't lay it anywhere on there. And it actually looks like it's part of the back. I mean, it actually blends in perfectly. And then this side blends in too. I don't know. I'll take a vote. Same direction or sideways? I'll grab a piece so you can see what sideways would look like. Hold on a second. All right, just to give a comparison, although I pretty much I pretty much decided this one's pretty cool. I think I'm gonna have to do this one, but here's sideways. Here's the back. Now the back might look kind of cool sideways. That's the back. And the front would be something similar to that. So I'll come closer so I can read your comments without falling over. Which one you guys like? Same direction? So far, just a couple for sideways. All right, same direction it is. You like it the way it is? Okay, good. Well, good, because then I don't have to cut out another piece of fabric and I can keep rolling. So a couple of things I want to point out. We're going to just leave the back up here for now because we don't need it, right? All right, so for the front, this section here is gathered. So we need to baste it together and then we're going to sew. So with right sides together, I'm going to stitch from here to here on here. But first I have to gather this. So we're going to gather the fabric and then I'm going to show you the move it foot. And I know a lot of you ask me, I don't know, does my dream machine have the move it foot? Yes, it does. So check your machine. You don't have to have the luminaire, although it's a perk if you do. But, all right. So we have this piece. Let's go gather. Meet you at the sewing machine. I'll be right there. It's not that far, but it sure seems to take forever. Okay, so on here, let me just take this out just a little bit so you can kind of see. I'm using, you can see my, I think that's, I don't know if that's the lighting from my ceiling or the machine that's on the back here. Okay, so this is really easy to do. And I'll just bring you out a little bit because you don't need to watch the stitch on here. Now, I'm going to, well, you might want to see this. So I'll take you to the screen. Here, go to, turn this off. Let's see. Close. There we go. I'm going to use a straight stitch. And down here, I'm going to make my stitch length 5.0. Now this number 1.08 is also a basting stitch, but my preference is to do this because I want to do a back stitch. I need to back stitch to hold this in place. Okay? And let me guess. You're going to probably want to see this. So just to make it easy for you, I will go ahead and throw in some bright yellow thread just so you can see the basting. And feel free to ask your questions. I can see some of them while I'm sewing, but not all of them. And I'll go back too. You can always message me. Okay, so there's the yellow. I know I love that. I love that automatic thread feature. I haven't broken mine on here yet. You know me, I'm always using like crazy thread and then doing what you're not supposed to do. Yes, I'm a brand ambassador, but that doesn't mean that I remember everything. So the seam allowance for this pattern is 1/2 inch. So I'm just going to come over here and I'm just going to start stitching. My gathers are about from here to here. Now, if I look at the pattern, I can actually mark it on here if I want to. If you look at the pattern, I take this out. This is the gathered area right here. So if I flip this over, looks like it's about from here to here. Just baste a little bit. And now I'm going to back stitch. And now go ahead and stitch. And I'm just going to stitch to the end, or close to the end, because I'm going to go back and do that serging in there later. Now, don't use your automatic needle cutter. Lift up your needle and give yourself some thread here, because you're going to need this to help with the gathering. See if I can cut that without looking. All right, now this side is going to be the exact same thing, except I'll just keep stitching this way. I'm going to start just away from the front a little bit. Do a stitch, do a back stitch. And then go down. I'll bring you in closer. Pull this out because you need that extra thread. All right, so now you have this gathering. You see that yellow? I'll take you over to the other camera real quick because we'll pin it over there. I think you'll see it better. Okay, so now, pretty sure you're going to be able to see this pretty good right here. See the yellow thread? Okay, so now that we have, let's see, center that. I've got my 2 sleeves. All right, I know I threw that. I knew I threw that piece somewhere. Where the heck did I throw it? All right, I spy. Oh, Melissa, great question. How you guys play I Spy and figure out where I put that thing while I'm answering Melissa's question. She says, how do you keep this slippery fabric from getting stuck into the needle plate? Well, a couple things. You could switch to the single hole needle plate. It takes just a second. That's the back. I need like that yoke piece. And I know I threw it. I'll find it. But anyways, you could use a single hole needle plate. That works great, Melissa. Or another thing is I start just a little bit inside the edge of the fabric. Don't start at the very edge, or that's a perfect recipe for it going bam, right into that needle plate. Close to the table. All right. I'll go back to the table. It must be there. I threw it on the floor. I have this. I have my sleeves. I have my little extra pieces. Oh, for heaven's sakes. Let me see if it's over by the, oh, it's by the sewing machine table. Whoever said that, you were right. Okay. I'll bring this. I'm just going to do one shoulder at a time because I think you'll see that better. Take this. Now let's see, figure out which end you started at. So for this one, it looks like I backstitched right here. So you're going to take your bobbin thread, not your top thread. You're going to take your bobbin thread and just give it a little tug. And this will make a really nice gather. And it will gather right up to where you did your back stitch. All right. How many gathers do you want? Well, this seam here needs to fit this seam here. So I don't need quite that many gathers. So you just kind of, that one area on the pattern that I showed you, that's where you want to ease the fabric in. And then you'll just slowly maneuver this until it fits. That makes sense. So it's not a huge gather, it's just a little one. So what is that gather anyways? Somebody asked me the other day, what about bust darts? That would have been a bust dart. I moved it to the shoulder seam. Well, it's not even the shoulder. It's kind of like right below your shoulder. So the bust dart, which would have been over here, I moved up here. All right, how are we looking? It's getting there. I don't think I took the gathers out of this one. No, it's still there. Just a little bit. It's hard to see with this fabric. And now when we go to sew this seam, I'm just gonna pin it just so I know how it looks when I get over there. Now, by the way, in real life, like when I'm here at my studio, I hardly use any pins. But since I'm trying to keep things nice and neat for you. Now for now, I'm just going to go back there and I'm going to baste this in because remember, I told you guys I was going to go back and serge all of this. I want to baste this in and I want to show you a fitting tip. And then you guys can go sew this the same way I'm sewing it. And I'll sew it for real without yellow thread. Yellow thread might be a little bit obvious on this fabric. So when it gets to the gathers, I want you to pay attention. Make sure that they are gathered squishing next to each other, not over each other. If they're over each other, that's what you call a pleat. That's the big difference. Okay, so it's gathered from here to here. What about the other one? This one I sewed from, looks like there's a back stitch here. So on this side, I'll pull up the bobbin thread. Now, could you gather using the serger on this? You could, but here's the problem. You can see that I really have to maneuver this a lot to make sure that I have just the right amount of gathers. And that will be the problem. You would have to really make sure that you did that right. Okay, I'm going to pin. Okay, one thing that I didn't realize as I'm pinning, I'm not attaching the shoulder area to here, just to this top section. So let me stretch this out a little bit. So it's just going up here to this area. Actually, you're not on the placket at all. I should rephrase that. You're just on the front piece of fabric. I'll show you mine when it's finished. I have one finished one here that you can see. All right. So we got it gathered enough? Yeah. I mean, it is such a minute amount of gathering, but if you want to take the gathering out, you can. You don't have to have it. You can move that dart someplace else. And then this side, I just want to make sure I didn't take it over too far. Nope, that looks good. All right, so let's go back to the machine, and I'm going to hook up the Move It foot. Hey, Kathleen, I'm using the, today I'm using the Luminaire 1 with the upgrade. So it's just like a Luminaire 2, but not. Okay. So let's just go in here, and if you haven't ever seen this before, see if I can slide around here without putting my head in the middle of the camera. Wow, I must have gotten really carried away when I put that one on. That sucker wasn't coming off. So if you just unscrew this screw right here, remove this, and then here's your Move It foot. And we've talked a lot about this lately. So this rubber part here this plugs into the machine, and the machine tells this rubber part how fast to move. So it's different than a walking foot. And this lever here, this means it's disengaged, and this means it's engaged. So if you were sewing and you didn't want to use it for a minute, you don't have to remove the whole foot, which is kind of nice. I always use my little screwdriver to make sure it's nice and tight in there. There we go. And then this piece here, I'm going to plug into the back of the machine. It's just right behind here. So if you look at the back of your machine, you'll see just a little opening there. All right, so now now that it's in there, come over here and check out the screen for a second. I'll bring you. It already knows that I've switched to that foot. Isn't that great? So let's just say I was in here and I wanted to do a decorative stitch, which I'm really not going to do on this, but if I hit that, you can still do those stitches. It'll tell you if you can't do a stitch. So like maybe, I know there's quite a few that you can't do, like that one. It'll just say, can't do it. So you can't screw up. I mean, you can, but it's very hard to do, I should say. Let's go back here and I'm going to click on here. Just going to do a straight stitch. Now, this is where this gets interesting because you can go into your settings. Let me just see my. If you haven't been through your screens to look at some of your settings, there are so many, like this one here, automatic fabric sensor. Now this has nothing to do with the move it foot, but I have mine off. So if I had that on, it would even determine if I was sewing with the knit and it adjusts the tension. How does it know? I don't know. So let's go back over here. I'm just going to go to the right screen and then I'll show you what I'm going to. Okay. I'm on page 2 on the Luminaire. So dual feed adjustment. Right now I have mine set at a -5. I was actually working on a project the other day that needed that. So I'm going to explain this again, how this works, but look at, you can go all the way up to -10 and +10. All right. So for now, I'm just going to leave it at 0, but I want to explain something real quick. How many of you have sewn a seam? I mean, assuming that you're sewing in the proper way and you're holding your thread, something like that, right? And you sew your seam and you get to the end and both your pieces of fabric were the same size when you started, and then you get to the end and you're off by this. Either the top layer or the bottom layer has shifted. So that's where this adjustment comes in. And if I'm going to use the move it foot, I always do a test. I will take 2 pieces of fabric, the exact same fabric I'm using, and I will adjust it until both pieces end up straight. So just cut yourself a few little scraps, and then you can tell if it's going to work or not. So that's a really easy way. And I'll use that one scrap that I threw on the floor that you reminded me about, and that will help. Definitely. Okay, let's go back to the machine. All right, so I'm just going to make sure I have 2 pieces that match just right. So to start, I'm feeling my fabric. The top side is super slippery, making sure they're both facing down. Yeah, so that's the way I'd be sewing, except this one would be going sideways, so a little bit different. So actually, you could start at 0. I'm going to guess that I'm going to need a little bit more on the setting. So I'm going to go like +2. And I'll test it. This is just scrap fabric, okay? Don't get seasick. Okay, now also make sure that this is in the down position. That means it's on. Now there are a ton of different feet you could get for this. It comes with some feet, depending on what machine you have. So I'm starting at the end. This is my scrap fabric, remember? And at this end, it's pretty close to being even. So we'll just see what we have. Actually, once I start the stitch, I'll just double check that it's going to be even. Otherwise, it would be kind of a stupid test, right? All right, needle is in the down position. Put this down. Well, it's awfully close if you look down here. In fact, what I'll do is just snip it so it's exact. Then there's no wondering at all. There, it's exactly the same now. Now, one thing while you're stitching with this, you want to make sure that you're at a medium speed. So you can either set it on your dial or just sew at a medium speed. I'm feeling this. It actually doesn't feel too bad, but proof's in the pudding at the end, right? I'm going to have to say that's pretty stinking darn close. So there's where we started, and look at the ending. I'll bring it really close. You see that? It's spot on. So what it did is it helped not move that fabric on the top, because what happens when you sew this, this is so slinky fabric. So let's try it. Let's just try to sew sideways. I'm still going to use a basting stitch because I'm going to go back and serge those edges later. But I want to finish this part because I want to give you a quick fitting tip. All right, so again, stitch length is a half of an inch, or our seam allowance is half of an inch. All my patterns are like that, by the way, in case you're wondering. I don't do the 5/8 of an inch. All right, now we're to the gathered part. This is kind of important, so make sure all of your fabric's laying flat. And I'll hold my finger right to the edge of where I want those gathers. So hopefully, the goal is that all of these gathers will fit in this one little section here. You don't want to ungather. You don't want gathers all the way across the whole top. That would be a little bit ridiculous, but let's see. Making sure I'm not going to sew over my finger. I'm just holding these here. If I had an awl sitting right here next to me, I would use that. All right, now we're past the area that's going to be gathered, and I'm going to stitch to the end. So by the way, it is somewhat of a good idea to baste this yourself before you sew this permanently, because if your gathers get stretched out too much or something like that. All right, and now let's try the other side. And no, I'm not going to stitch over my pins. I have them here really just so I can hold everything in place while I'm talking to you guys and not paying attention. It's called multitasking. It doesn't always work when you're sewing silk or velvet or anything else for that matter. All right, getting to the part where it needs to be gathered. So I just want to make sure my gathers aren't pushed too far forward. Kind of ease these back a little bit. That looks great. You know, you can hardly even see these gathers. I almost wonder if I didn't take the gathers out of this one when I cut it, but we'll see. If not, I might take them out. So let's go to the dress form. I'm going to give it a quick pressing on the way by, and I'll meet you at the dress form. I want to give you a quick fitting tip. All right. I didn't take you to press with me. Sorry. But I wanted to give you the fitting tip. And the iron was right there. All right. So we are coming together. It's looking fantastic. This is the part you really want to check. Does this lay nice and flat? That was why I really was focusing on that one section. That's why you pin it in place like that. All right, as you can see, I can see my gathers right here, just a few of them. There aren't a lot, but they are there. So it's just like a light gather. That's your word for the day, a light gather. All right. Boy, I'm just like thinking of New Year's Eve all day long with this thing. I'm loving it. Now, before you attach your back piece, because the next section will be to attach this piece here onto here, okay? But before you do that, number one, you need to decide if you're going to do a placket or you're going to do gathers. But I always try this on, and this was a question with the Fashion Sewing Club when we did the whole fitting section. Some people were having problems where this top would push back, like they'd always keep like they kept. Some people said it would push back. Some people said they might have had to push forward. So this is probably your most important fitting part on here. Slide this around your neck. And if you notice that when it's on, it's pushing back, you might have to cut some of this out. It might be too high on, everybody's body shape's so different, right? So you might have to cut some of this out so it lays better. Can't add fabric, so it's either cutting or nothing at all. So just check that, because if it's pushing up too much, maybe it needs to push down further. We also talked about other fitting things. Maybe the placket had to be shorter, but if everything fit fine and now you try it on and you're like, oh, it's like pulling at my neck, then all you have to do is trim a little bit of this away. Now, if you trim that away, you know what's going to happen. You're going to need to have your collar cut a little bit wider, because the collar will come down and around here. So we are making fabulous progress. Now there's just one thing that I didn't check, and I have enough fabric if I screwed it up, except this fabric is a little pricey. So I'm really keeping my fingers crossed that I did this right. Sleeves. Did I line up the print with the sleeves? Because if it's a no-go, I'm recutting it. And if it's a yes go, it's another lucky mistake, because I wasn't even thinking. So how you would know if this is going to line up on the sides for your sleeves is you have to imagine that this is going to be sewn into the side seam here. And this side will be in the side seam. Oh my goodness. Well, one of you guys are looking out for me that day because it's perfect. So you can see, here's the sleeve. It matches that entire velvet area here and down here. So I'm just going to pin this just a little bit just to double check. Not that I want to recut it. Because if I didn't, I would just tell you guys, hey, you know what? Fabric's too expensive. I'm not going that road. So if this was pinned to here, and this is hanging, and this would be pinned to this section and hanging, I don't know. What do you say? I think that that's pretty darn lucky. Whew. That was a lucky move. All right, so that was your lesson for the day. Do you have any more questions about the Move It foot? This is my cat mug. Get my lipstick off there. Isn't it funny? And I got my squirrel up here holding my tea bag. All right, so I thought it was pretty good. I'm just going to check if I have any of your comments or questions that I missed. Louise wants to know, wondering if your serge seam is not just to finish your edges, but they actually seam stitching. No, I'm stitching those edges just to finish the seams, to make them look nice. So once I serge that inside edge there, I'm not going to use yellow thread. So I'm trying to do some that you can see, and then you'll see a ton on It's So Easy. I got a little surprise for you on Wednesday. And then I'll go back and top stitch along here. And this part here I basted in, but I'm going to make sure that this lays nice and flat. If there's still a little bump here, I will actually push this down and make sure that it lays flat. I'm a big fanatic about that. But when I do it this time, I won't have to be leaning over the video camera trying to keep my head out of your way. Helen wants to know, do you have classes after 5 p.m. or on weekends? So Helen, first off, I have the Fashion Sewing Club, and most of our live sessions are around 4 o'clock p.m., sometimes earlier, but mostly like 4. Sometimes we'll do a 6 or Zoom with everybody, but you can also go back and watch any of the Fashion Sewing Club episodes anytime. They're all in the club. So at this point, I don't have any classes planned for the evenings or weekends, but all of my classes are recorded either live or recorded, and you can go back and watch them. So I would say, what would you guys say in the Fashion Sewing Club? Like maybe, I would say 25% watch live, 75% watch later. So that works too. Jen, yours growls at people. So by the way, I know we're almost up out of time here, but I have to tell you, those squirrels that I've been training in the backyard with those peanuts, oh goodness gracious. I'm just going to say, might not be a good idea because now they freak me out. They are there in the morning. I mean, I get up really early and I'm working on the computer and the screen door is right there. And all of a sudden it starts to get light and you've got 3 little heads down there. And they're just like, and they sit on their back legs and play with their hands like this and tap the door until I give them their nuts. I don't know. Larry, Curly, and Mo all over again. Thanks, Kathleen. Okay, do you guys have any questions on that top? Oh, does the luminaire substitute for sergers? Oh, no, Jen. The luminaire is a sewing and embroidery machine. A serger cuts and finishes the edges. Now, you can do something kind of like that on the luminaire. I mean, it does have an overlock stitch, and you can do something like that. But the serger is just so easy to run over and finish your seams. So I'm guessing if you have the luminaire, the price of a serger is peanuts. So I would add it to your sewing room. It just makes your garments and everything look so much more professional. Melissa, do you prefer sewing machine versus serger for garment construction? Okay, so the top I'm wearing is a knit. Now I've basted it with a sewing machine on the side, which I'm glad that it's still sewn. That would have been a little embarrassing today. But now I'm going to go run it through the serger. So I like all of them. I like the sewing machine, I like the serger, and I like the cover stitch. But I sew a ton of knits. So if you sew a lot of knits, pretty much the serger and cover stitch could do all of that. The only problem is, what if you want to test the fit and run a basting stitch? You need a sewing machine. So each one has a different purpose. Definitely. Yes, Tammy, I couldn't think of the name of that foot, but there is a foot like that. Okay, you'll keep it. Take it. Jen, you have a serger in the box? I have a ton of YouTube videos. A ton of YouTube videos. And there's a ton in my Fashion Sewing Club too, to teach you how to thread it and use it and all that stuff. Deborah, I don't have the patience to try it. Well, this one pushes my patience, but when I'm finished, it'll look great. Hey, Phyllis. Okay, so any more questions? I guess I'll have to try mine. Oh, Celeste, you guys are hilarious. We should have like a contest of who has like what in a box for the longest period of time. Thanks, Kathleen. Thanks, Betty. All right, I think if I didn't miss anybody. Joanne, would you ever consider a show on altering ready-to-wear tops, necklines, shoulders that are too large? The industry, when making plus sizes, make the neck hole and shoulders way too large. I agree, by the way, Joanne. But by the way, I don't know if you ever take classes. It's no affiliation to Brother, but I teach classes on Craftsy. I have three classes there on how to do alterations because I did that for 20 years for customers. So those are 3 great classes. And also we teach some of that in the Fashion Sewing Club. But you might like those. Quite a few of you in here I recognize have taken those classes. All right, I think I got everybody's questions. If I missed you, I'm sorry. Oh, Glenda, are you lining or birthing the yoke? Oh, that's so funny when you guys say that. I'm not gonna line, I'm only cutting 1 yoke piece. I do have some black chiffon that I could use because in the pattern, there's actually 2 layers because the inside's finished. But for this, I got to see if it's going to show, because if it is, then I'm just going to have 1 layer and just serge it and let it go. That was a great question, Glenda. Okay, I'll just scroll back to the end. Yeah, it's on Craftsy. And if you go to angelawolf.com, I think I have a link to all of those too. So Betty, a serger, I wouldn't say harder to use. What I would say is it's different. once you get past the threading, you'll be fine. I agree, Louise. I think it's going to be great with jeans. Well, I'm not going anywhere, so it's got to look good with jeans or leggings. That's all I'm wearing. All right, so that's it for today. And so your schedule for the week is tomorrow. I believe Barbara Jones is coming on. Let me check real quick. Mark your calendar. You can always go into Brothers Sews and see all of the list for the classes, but it is hot in my studio today. I have had the heater on. Who knew it was going to be like 70 degrees outside? It just, can't figure this out. Okay, so tomorrow, well, today, my fitting class, I will see you at 4 p.m. Tomorrow, Brother Live at noon with Barbara Jones, and she will be doing something very cool on the luminaires. So that would be very fun. Hey, Melissa, just go to, I think I have it on here. If you go to angelawolf.com, it's on there. But I also want to point out here, I'm going to put this up if I can find it real quick. For those of you who have never been here before, Brother has a ton of blog posts that can show you how to, here's both of our websites. Let me take that big banner off there. Blog.brothersews.com. They have new stuff all the time. They've got videos. They've got, if you're trying to learn how to use your serger, sewing machine, any Brother machine, and there's a free embroidery design of the month that Joanne does. There's so many cool things on there. So go check that out. Okay, so tomorrow Barbara Jones will be on and we will be doing the luminaire. I'm pretty sure she's doing something in my design center, but it's always a surprise, which is awesome. And then let's see. I have the couture class tomorrow at 1. Now Wednesday, I have to be on the road on Wednesday. So since I can't be, I'm going to be with you live, but it's going to be kind of live. I have something fun planned for you. So it'll be launched as a premiere, which you'll be able to see, and I will be able to see. I will be live with you, but I will be with you in the comments. So I think it'll be a lot of fun. Of course, it has something to do with the Linda Tunic. And what are you going to do when you're on the road, right? I never know if I'm going to have internet. So I think I'll have enough internet to watch with you and make comments. All right. Sound good? Oh, Yoli, yes, I do have classes for beginners. Just go to angelawolf.com. Okay, and that's pretty much the schedule for the week. Saturday, there is an It's So Easy episode, season 20, episode 7. And I don't remember what's on that episode, but all I was doing through that season was athletic wear. Comfy, comfy, comfy stuff. So I hope you have a great day, and you can always message me if you need something, and great seeing you all. Have a wonderful day. And brother, thanks for letting us take over your page. Super fun. Bye, Brother Sewing family.